All right, so let's talk about comparison. The issue here is that there's really two kinds of comparison that you can do. There's the comparison of more than, right? So we're comparing two things, and we're saying that one thing has more of a quality than another. John is taller than Mark. John is faster than Peter. Okay? And then there are comparisons where you're comparing likeness or similarity. Okay? And so I could say that something is, he is, wild like a boar, for example. We're going to do this like men, or you're going to do this like women. And that's comparison for likeness or similarity. Two things are similar to one another. If John is taller than Mark, then he has more of a quality than Mark does in some regard. Okay? In Hebrew, we're going to use for the first thing the preposition men to accomplish that. For the second kind, we're going to use the preposition ke, the inseparable preposition. Okay? Now, almost the entirety of section 9.3 is devoted to the comparative use of the preposition men. And then he gives a very short shrift to the comparative kaf. And really, the comparative use of the kaf is not that difficult. So there really isn't a whole lot to be said. But let's talk about how the men can be used here for uses of comparison where one person or thing has more of a quality than another. Let's take our example from Ross. We have Tovah, Chokmah, Mizahav. Okay, so this is our sentence. Now, Tovah Chokmah, if that's all you had, how would you translate that? Tovah Chokmah. Wisdom is good. What type of an adjective is Tovah here in this case? It's a predicate adjective. Excellent. That's a predicate use. Okay? It doesn't go after this noun, but it does agree with that noun in gender and number. This is what predicate adjectives do. So wisdom is good. Now take a look at what I've got here. I've got the word zahav, which means what? Gold. And then I have a men preposition attached the Marine Corps way, right? So, if you translate this preposition men the way you learned to translate the preposition men when you first met it, this would be something like, wisdom is good from gold. How does that sound? That doesn't make very good sense, does it? And it's because the preposition men has a variety of semantics associated with it, a variety of meanings. There can be this idea of separation from, which is what you've learned men as having the semantics of separation. But now we learn that the men can have the semantics of comparison. And so here is the quality that's being compared. Goodness, being good. And wisdom is good, has the quality of goodness, in comparison with what? Well, the point of comparison here is what the men is attached to. We're comparing the goodness of wisdom relative to gold, okay? And so the men is attached to that point of comparison. So when you come to a sentence that has a men preposition, and it doesn't make sense to translate it as from or away from, then you might want to go with the comparison idea. And you could even translate it as compared to. Okay, the men translate as compared to, and then whatever the object of the preposition men is would go after that. So if I say something like wisdom is good compared to gold, what am I saying? Wisdom is better than gold, right? Now, what have I done? In English, I've had to take my adjective and switch it to what is called the comparative adjective. We have comparative adjectives in English, okay? And actually, let me just give you the layout here. Our adjectives are described in grammar as being positive, comparative, and superlative, okay? The positive might be something like thick. Comparative, thicker. Superlative, what would that be? Thickest, right? So the positive is just the normal form. The comparative is when you're taking two things and you're comparing them against one another. Thicker. So I would say, of these two, this one is thicker. John is thicker than Mark. If I'm trying to say that something has the quality in the highest level compared to anything else, or to more than two, then I use the superlative in English, and I use EST. We also can use the words more and most, right? So, beautiful, more beautiful, and most beautiful. So those are our forms in English. Okay? Hebrew does not add suffixes like we do to form comparative adjectives. They have to use the men preposition to do this. Okay? So this is Hebrew strategy for doing such a thing. We don't change the word tovah and add some kind of a suffix to it to mean more good or better. All right? We add men to the thing that we're comparing something else against. So let's just look at a couple more examples. In our textbook, we're given Saul and David as two people who are being compared, and we have Gadol, David, and then we have our men preposition, Mishaul. Okay? How would I translate just Gadol David by itself? David is great, right? Just Gadol David is David is great. Now I have a men preposition attached to Shaul, to the name Saul. So David is great. Do I want to say from Saul? Is that really how I want to translate that? Probably not, right? Rather, I want to take this men and say, maybe that's a comparative idea. If so, it's David is great compared to Saul. Now, what does that mean? David is greater than Saul, right? David is greater than Saul. So does this make sense to you? So anytime you have that men attached to some other noun and an adjective is in view, you're going to translate your adjective as an ER form, greater, or put more in front of the adjective. More beautiful. More Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. By the way, do you know when in English we use ER versus more? Like most of our adjectives, you choose one strategy or the other for making a comparative adjective. Does anybody know what the general rule of thumb is?
The word is more than 2 syllables or more.
That's right. If the word is more than 2 syllables, then instead of adding ER, leave it the way it is when it's the positive form and add more. Beautiful has 3 syllables, so we wouldn't say beautifuler, right? We would say more beautiful. Now, when we have 2-syllable words, sometimes that gets a little tricky because I think we've started to shift in some ways. Handsome. What's the comparative for handsome? I think most of us would probably say more handsome, right? Would you? Or would you say handsomer? What about the most handsome? Or would you say he's the handsomest of all? Yeah. We might be split pretty evenly on that. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, the next sentence that Ross gives you, this is another situation where I would have liked for him to have either not used this or to have explained it a little bit more. These first 2 examples that we talked about are comparative uses of the men. But there's also a use that some of our grammar textbooks would refer to as the elative use of men. And that's what this third example is. Take a look at what we have. We have kasha, which I think this is one of your new adjectives. Kasha means what? Difficult or harsh. Okay? So, and then we have ha-avodah, which is the word for labor, service. So, kasha ha-avodah means the work is hard. The work is difficult. But then I have this men prepositional phrase here. Me ha-na'arim. Okay? Now, what is ha-na'arim? Yeah, it's the lads, okay? So think about this. Here's my preposition men right here. The way we've been reading these other sentences, it's like the work is harder or more difficult than the lads. Does that make sense? This work is hard, but think about these lads. They're difficult. No, that's not what's going on here, right? Work and lads are not being compared to each other for how hard they are. So how is this men functioning? It's really functioning in a different way. What we're saying is that the work is too hard for the lads. Okay? Or too difficult for the lads. And so this is a different, it's sort of related to the comparative men, but it isn't strictly speaking a comparative use. And that's why some grammarians refer to it as the elative use. Someone's elated, they're high, right? They're up. You think of, someone just says, I'm elated, I feel like I'm walking on the clouds. So this issue here is where the men is attached to a noun for whom this noun has the quality to some high level that it's too much for it. All right? So the work is too hard or too difficult for the lads would be the way to translate this. The men is used in expressions like where Yahweh says, it's anything too difficult for me, right? You've heard that expression? Nothing is too difficult for you. The min is used for that. Okay? In Hebrew, it would look like what's being said is, nothing is more difficult than you. That's not the way to translate that. It's not nothing is more difficult than you. It's nothing is too difficult for you. Okay, yeah, don't tell God that. All right. Now, the last thing in this little section is has to do with that preposition kaf. And there is nothing unusual or difficult here. You already know how to add the preposition kaf to nouns, don't you? And you know that the preposition kaf can be translated like or as. So in our example, it just gives us an expression. These are some words you don't know, but Lavan means white. Sheleg means snow. Okay? And when I add the preposition kaf to sheleg with the article swallowed up here, it's white like the snow, or white like snow. Okay? So you wouldn't have any trouble translating this if you knew the words, because you're going to translate your preposition kaf as like or as. Okay, white as snow, white like snow. That is a comparison, but not where something is more of a quality than another, but that both are like each other. Okay, so we're comparing two things for likeness. We use the preposition kaf for that. 9.4 introduces us to the concept of diphthongs. Oops, that's an H. Okay, so what is a diphthong? A diphthong is a situation where two vowel sounds come together to create a sound. Okay, and in English we have diphthongs like if we say ouch, okay, that ow sound is a diphthong. Ow. So Hebrew has some diphthongs. And what happens, and the reason that this is introduced in this part of the chapter, is because he's anticipating giving you a new vowel chart. And some of the vowels, and the way that they're arranged in the vowel chart, will make sense only if you understand this thing about diphthongs. So in Hebrew, we can have the A and the Y sound coming together to form a diphthong. I. And we see it in a word like bayit. Okay? Bayit. The word probably would have originally been pronounced bite, and then this Keurig was added to help break up that consonant cluster at the end there, bayit, and the accent is there. What's going to happen with the AY diphthong is that in certain circumstances it's going to lose its stress, and when it does, the diphthong is going to undergo what's called contraction. Okay? And when they undergo contraction, the I sound is going to be simplified to a single sound, and it's going to become sereyod. So bayit becomes bait. Bayit, bait. Notice there's no accent mark on this. And this is going to be used in situations like when I want to say something like Bethel. Beit El is the house of God. Right? Bayit means house. Beit Lechem is Bethlehem, the house of bread. So my AY diphthong can contract and become the sereyod, which, remember, in transliteration, it's an E with the party hat over it. And then the AW diphthong can contract to a Holem Vav, which is an O with the party hat over it. We have already seen this in the form of the word Tavich. Remember, that means midst. Tavich. See the A, the Kemet, and the Vav, which is transliterated as a W. The Awith, remember the Vav would have originally been pronounced as a W sound, so Awich, Tawich. And when it loses its stress under certain conditions, the AW contracts to a Holem Vav, and it can become Toch. And remember, we saw this when we had things like Betoch, in the midst of someplace, in the midst of the garden, in the midst of Israel, and so forth. All right? Now, what's the point here? The point here is that Sereyod, you have thought of as what vowel? Well, you've thought of it as an E, haven't you? A historically long E. But now you know that it's actually derived from what vowel? An A, right? That historically long E was really, in many cases, originally an A vowel with a Y following it. And you also learned Holem Vav as a historically long vowel, and it went under what vowel in the historically long section? Well, a long O, right? Historically long O. But now you can see that it was derived from, in these cases, an A followed by a Vav, a W. Ow became O. So they're going to find their place in our historical vowel chart where you didn't expect them. But here's why they're under the A section. And that brings us to the vowel chart itself. In 9.5. So, I have here our historical vowel chart handout. Okay? So when we first learned the vowels, they were simplified according to a 5 vowel chart to try to help you as English speakers make sense of the vowel sounds, because we have a 5 vowel system in English. A, E, I, O, U. Right? And technically that's a simplification. We have 5 vowels, at least in terms of our writing system. But we have a lot more vowel sounds, right? Because the A sound can occur a bunch of different ways. In Hebrew, it appears that there was really more of a 3 vowel system in the history of the language. And so we're going to relearn our vowel chart and place them along this continuum of 3 historical vowels: the A vowels, the I vowels, the U vowels, or the A class, I class, and U class vowels. And I've given them to you here in a different order. The A, I, and U are along the top, so they form the columns that go up and down. And then the lengths are going to be on the left side. They indicate the rows. Okay, so I'm going to start with historically longs on the top here. Tone long, tone short. And then compound shavaz. Remember, I'm not treating them as real vowels, but they do share vowel class distinctions, right? My compound shavaz have pathak, segol, or kametz ketuf as part of the element that makes up the compound shava. So there are no new vowels to learn here. It's just learning a new arrangement for them, okay? So if you look at the A-class vowels, notice that I have 3 historically long A-class vowels. The kametz he, that's very much at home here, because you already associate the kametz he with a long A sound. What's unusual is the Sereyod and the Holem Vav, because we thought those were E's and O's. But notice, I don't have an E and an O class here, do I? So that's one thing that's missing. But secondly, we're cramming all three of these in. But now you know why they're here. It's because Serei Yod is coming from an original AY. Holam Vav is coming from an original AW. Okay? Now the tone long is Kametz. The tone short is primarily Pathak. Okay? And so if you will, just jot down the Segol sometimes happens, but it's much rarer to find a Segol as an A-class vowel. And then my compound Shava is the Katef Pathak here. Now if you look at the I-class ones, the Kirik Yod is my historically long I-class. That is very normal and expected. But over here, and by the way, just to remind ourselves, we transliterated the Kirik Yod as an I with the party hat, so that matches the letter I over here, so we're good. But the Serei is an E with a line over it in transliteration, right? So you're sitting there thinking, E vowels, what's the E doing under I? Well, if you think about it, the sounds I and E and are still produced toward the front of the mouth. They share some similarities here. The A vowels are where? They tend to be produced further back. Ah, right? Ah, and so forth. And so you're going to have to get used to seeing the I's and E's belong together in that middle column. Now we have Segol and Kirik. These are both very frequently going to be the short versions of the I-class vowels. So E and I for those. And then my Katef Segol is the compound Shava of the I-class variety. And then over here, for the U-class, I have the Shurik, which is a U with the party hat and transliteration. So that's not unusual. But what maybe is the tone long version of the U-class vowel. The Holam gets put here. That's the O with the macron over it. Okay? And you may be thinking to yourself, well, it's going to be really hard for me to associate the vowel O with the U-class. But remember, when we learned our vowel classes in the other chart, we only had 3 tone long vowels, didn't we? So those 3 have to go somewhere. And the O and the U's are closer together. Think about O and U. Do you notice anything that those share in common? O, U. What are we doing? We're rounding our lips for those, aren't we? So there's some shared characteristics there. In ancient Hebrew, those would have been considered part of the same vowel class. Our tone short vowels are the Kametz Ketuv and the Kibbutz. So there those are. So remember, that's not a long A, that's a short O. And then our Katef, Kametz Ketuv here, is the compound Shava. For those of you that speak a little Spanish, here's maybe something to help remind you about the O and the U actually belonging to similar classes. How many of you speak Spanish know the word pelo? You know the word pelo? What's that mean? Pelo means what? Say that louder. Hair. That's right. So this is hair. Okay? And then we have a word that's related to pelo, and it's this. Peluqueria. Okay? Barber. Very good. It's the place where you can get your hair cut. All right? I want you to notice what happened here. It's just sort of interesting to me. I'm not a Spanish linguist. But did you notice that the O shifted to a U in forming that compound word? Okay?
Yes, sir.
And so maybe, if you speak Spanish, that will help you to remember that in Hebrew, the O and the U's belong together, okay?
we don't have any better.
Let's read the vocab words together here.